Welcome to Divergent Wisdom Broadcast, where curiosity reveals the endless aspects of convergence between science and spirituality. Join me, Doc Sibson, as we explore new perspectives with our guests, bridging the space between worlds to discover paradigm-shifting common ground. It's time to get rebellious. So, I am extremely glad to welcome my guest today, AnnMarie McKenzie, to the podcast. And this is round 2 for us of recording this interview. We had an adventure a little while ago, which has brought us here today instead. So I'd just love to start out by asking you to tell us a bit about yourself, and also want to know what you feel makes you unique.
Well, from a business perspective, I'm a Soulful Business Strategist, a professional numerologist, and a psychic spiritual teacher. I also consider myself to be a heart-conscious leader. What makes me unique and special? Just that word special in itself, I always want to say struggle with, but it makes me contemplate, right? I think the best way to describe what makes me unique would be through my energetic code, through numerology. So I am a ruling number 3, a personal day master 11, and 7 of clubs. So many of the people in your audience probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's what we're going to discuss today. Yeah.
So that is a perfect foray, I think, into just sharing a little bit about what numerology is as a starting point for people that have never heard of it, or maybe only have heard the word. What would you say to someone who's really, really just becoming aware of that practice?
Of numerology. Everything in the universe is energy. Everything is coded to an energy. And what I love about numerology is that it's rooted in mathematics and science, and it's thousands and thousands of years old. So it's one of the most ancient wisdoms that we can dial into to understand ourselves and also to better understand the universe. And what's beautiful about it is that numbers are something that we've played with for our entire lives. So there's not a lot of gatekeeping happening with this modality because we've played with numbers for so long. And it's simple and yet very complex. So it gets to be accessible and it gets to be easy to understand. And it also gets to be something that we can use to strengthen our intuition and to learn how to communicate with the universe.
Wow, that's beautiful. So with what you described about your own code, what communication or understanding does that offer us, some wisdom about who you are and who you came here to be this time?
As a ruling number 3, so I'll talk about the not so great aspects. And the 3 first is I can be a worrywart. One of my clients said, one of her statements was, I'm a warrior, not a worrier. And I love that, especially when I'm connecting that to the 3 energy. When I was younger, I experienced a lot of anxiety and I had a scarcity mindset. I was always worried that there wasn't going to be enough. Now, the flip side of that 3 energy is that I'm extremely creative. I'm very expansive. Like I can take an idea and I'm the one that blows it up. And abundance is my birthright. I'm a manifesting badass. And I explained the 3 from that perspective to help everybody understand that the reason why I love numerology as well is that there's a spectrum in the energy that goes from low to high, and you get to choose where you're going to be in the spectrum of that energy of your code. So it offers a lot of space and a lot of grace for us to continue growing and transforming and changing. And we can dip down into worry and anxiety for a moment, or I can choose to remember that abundance is my birthright and I'm a manifesting badass and create something in order to call in that abundance.
Beautiful. So what I'm hearing is that it doesn't define you. It just gives you that kind of parameters that you play within and can expect to be easily accessible to you. Because I think that's what a lot of people might worry about with anything like this, which seems, I don't know, kind of limiting or putting ourselves into other boxes and taking us just out of one system and labeling you in another. I think it's important to highlight that this is just a way to access understanding. It doesn't necessarily say that it has to be one way or another. You get to access all of that.
Yeah. I do believe it does define us. I'm somebody that I've done all the numerology code for myself and hundreds of people now, but I've also done a lot of different personality tests. And I understand what you mean by putting somebody in a box, like true colors, for example. I remember doing that in like 2004. And the facilitator said, "You're blue." And I said, well, I actually scored 8 in blue, 7 in green, 7 in orange, and 7 in yellow. So I was 1 point off of the other colors. I said, I think that makes me brown. And the facilitator said, I think that makes you confused with who it is that you are, and wanted me to pick a lane. And I saw that as I was a very flexible leader and I knew how to adapt to different situations, and that I was very flexible. And I want to hone in on those words, adapt and flexibility. Again, that's why I love numerology and understanding our energetic code, because there is so much adaptability and flexibility within it. And again, there's layers upon layers upon layers, where sometimes we might be extremely connected to an aspect of our code. And there could be other times where we hear something about ourselves and we're completely disconnected. We do not see it. We do not feel it. We do not believe that that's who it is that we are, but we get to explore that possibility. And the more that we explore that possibility, the more we realize, oh, that is who I came here to be. That is my purpose, or these are one of my gifts. Perhaps I just haven't learned some of the skills within that gift in order to allow it to fully flourish, and in order for me to reach my highest potential within that particular aspect of my code.
I really love that perspective about it being a potential. So even if something doesn't feel right for where you are now in the moment that you're looking at it, it can be a guidepost and a way to kind of lead you to ask more questions and investigate, what that element of your numbers is inviting you to learn more about and potentially discover within yourself if it feels like that's something that sparks your interest. And sometimes it might just be purely out of, I don't believe it, resistance too. You can get to things 2 different ways, can't you? So I guess my next question would then be, what have you found in your own grid and birth chart that felt that way for you when you first looked at it?
The 7 of Clubs broke me wide open. This is my sun card. So for anybody listening who understands astrology, it's very similar to our sun signs. I'm an Aries, and in numerology, I'm a 7 of Clubs. So this is the work that I came here to do. And the 7 of Clubs is a spiritual teacher. I cried because I knew that this is who I was meant to be since I was very young, kicked into overdrive as a teenager. And I hid a lot of aspects of myself, particularly my spirituality, in order to be liked and loved by other people. And there was a lot of shame and guilt for not accepting that about myself and not just being me. And I had some forgiveness to do around that. I forgave myself for hiding, for playing small, for keeping that divine wisdom that I have to myself, and for not sharing it with the world. The 7 of Clubs is all about, yes, spiritual wisdom and knowledge, but knowledge isn't power unless it's shared. And all of us deserve to access the power of the universe, and we do that through our code. And yeah, it wasn't until I sat down and had that big conversation with myself about, okay, you chose to be this in this lifetime. Your soul made a contract in this lifetime to be this. Are you going to just go and do and be that authentically you? And I'm so glad that I did. And I have never looked back since that moment that I did. And part of that was numerology. It was numerology that made me not aware of it. It helped me remember it. Numerology has been a remembering for me. Every single aspect of numerology has been a big reminder of what it is that I already know about myself. And I do believe that I have been a numerologist in several different lifetimes as well.
Yeah, it's that familiarity as you start to unpack something that on the surface in your experience this time around, and it feels like a new thing, but is so familiar and feels like coming home sometimes, I think, when you find the thing that's right for you. That's been my experience anyway. And I would love for people to feel like they are able to access more of that feeling in their own lives. So is there some advice that you could give us about a place to start with numerology and how people might kind of go about dipping their toe into that water and see if this is something that's right for them that might help them understand themselves a bit better?
Mm-hmm. Always start with what I call the ruling number, and other modalities, it's called the life path number. This is one of the core energies that we carry. It is also been my experience that when I do these readings for clients and we start talking about the ruling number, this is the one that people brush off quite often, that they don't fully embrace it or see it. Like, as an example, every time I tell somebody that they're a ruling number 6 and I remind them that everything works out for them, their response is, yeah, it does. And I just kind of pause and I'm like, you do realize that everything doesn't work out for everybody all the time, right? And they take it for granted. So there's a lot of aspects of our ruling number that we take it for granted. Just like I'm looking at my ocean view, I've got mountains, I've got islands I'm looking at. And it's like every time I drive down to the city to pick somebody up from the airport, I make sure that I pause and I appreciate what I have. I mean, now I live here, so I get to look at it all the time. But when I didn't live right on the water, it was like when I left my community and I did that drive, sometimes I took it for granted. I just drove down, I listened to music or a podcast, and I didn't really appreciate what space I was in. And I think we do that, especially with our ruling number. We don't truly appreciate that 4 energy that we have. It is because it's in our nature, right? We're in this habit of being you, right? We have these habits of being me. But again, there's a spectrum of this energy. So I see this all the time, especially with young children. And I see parents reinforcing it over and over, and it drives me insane. Oh, well, my daughter has anxiety. She doesn't have anxiety. She's experiencing anxiety. She isn't anxiety. She's having the feeling of anxiety. And perhaps she is somebody in her code that easily accesses anxiety more so than other people. But it doesn't mean that that's who that person is. Because again, it's a spectrum. So we get to choose how often, how long we want to experience that aspect of our code. Which something like anxiety, when we look at the lower vibration or the lower spectrum, it's not meant to be judged or criticized. It just is. But it's an awareness that I'm in the lower vibration of my code, and I can choose differently to move into a higher frequency. And those lower frequencies are fear, and the higher frequencies are love. It is that simple. We get to choose. Am I going to continue operating out of the fearful shadow side of my code, or am I going to operate from the loving, caring, compassionate side?
And it's accessing the awareness of what that code even is that helps you understand where it's already showing up in your life, that already feels like you and feels so easy, like you described the sixes, just expecting everyone to have that experience of life and not realizing. And I know you and I have had that conversation a number of times about me and mine and the ease of accessing change and leaning into it as a 5 and not realizing that everybody doesn't do it that way until it's brought to your awareness. You just don't realize what is intrinsic and more natural for you compared to others unless you're given something that reflects that difference. And this can be that for some people if it feels right.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel as well that just stepping into something like your ruling number will immediately help you to come back to this place of not trying to be everything for everyone. You know exactly what I mean,
important,
right?
So important.
Like, these are my strengths. These are my gifts. Yes, these are my challenges and the things that I'm working on. This is how I operate on the mental plane, the physical plane, the emotional plane, the spiritual plane. And I don't have to be anything outside of that because I don't have to be everything to everyone. I get to be just me. That's like when we step into business as an entrepreneur. When we first start this business, as you know all too well, you wear all the hats. Like one moment I'm a bookkeeper, the next moment I'm a content creator, the next moment I'm an influencer, the next moment I'm a public speaker, and then I'm a facilitator, and then I'm a teacher, and then I'm trying to figure out Google Sheets, or I'm trying to figure out like a new system. But eventually you get to this point of delegation because the systems are in place and you're creating this so you can step into the light of, again, your gifts and your purpose and what it is that you came here to do in your zone of genius, not trying to be everything to everyone. And that's how we create a successful business. It's the same thing in our life. If we're looking to build relationships, and I had a wonderful conversation with somebody today that I was doing a forecast. She's looking to call in cosmic love. And she's explaining to me her story and some experiences that she had recently. And I can't help but smile and giggle because she's really, all my clients kind of line me up for the forecast. And then at the end, I said, why are you getting in your own way? And she was like, I knew you were going to tell me that. And I said, well, you know what it is that you're calling in. And yet you still keep showing up in this vibration or the frequency of what it is that you don't want. And then here you are, you're surprised that this happened again. You're surprised that this group of people that you thought were your people aren't your people. Are you showing up as who you came here to be? Or are you still hiding? She knew the answer. Then when she was describing the dating experiences that she had been on, it was an exact reflection of how she was showing up. They weren't showing their true colors, and then they would disappear. And I said, well, how are you hiding aspects of yourself and playing small and also not showing up fully in your own life? This is a reflection or a mirror. So bringing it back to numerology, and where do we start with that ruling number? Again, truly understanding who we are and embracing it and leaning into it and building skills within that. Well, then we get to hang out in that higher frequency or that higher vibration of our code and who it is that we are. And that becomes authentic, and authenticity becomes magnetic. And when we become magnetic, then we start attracting exactly the people and the experiences and the situations that we desire, that our heart has longed for a really long time. And it's simply by being exactly who we are.
It's so beautiful. And I think worth highlighting. So being more of yourself is what connects you to exactly the things that you truly deep down are searching for. And
Absolutely.
I think that's where we go astray. So often we're always seeking for it outside of ourselves and answers in other people or other situations or dropped a pen, new jobs or, anything that might fill that what feels like a hole sometimes, that search for truth, feeling like you. And the more we search for it outside of us, the less we're likely to find it. And I think the more people have options and ways to go in and start looking for what they're not expressing in themselves, the better.
Absolutely. And it's all aspects of it too. It's the not so great aspects, like loving, maybe more so loving on those pieces as well of ourselves. I know in my relationship, when it first started, like I was trying to hide the fact that I wore glasses. I was hiding the fact that I had curly hair. Why? And that ended up being two of the things that he loves about me. Like he loves going shopping for glasses with me and tells me, oh, you have to get these ones. They look great and they're on brand. I remember I was incubating an idea for my business. I think it was with a podcast name. And I was sharing that with my partner and I said, I think I'm overthinking this. And he goes, well, that's what you do. And he wasn't putting me down when he said it. It was a compliment. It was just a fact. It was just a matter of fact. Well, that's what you do. You overthink and you overanalyze things. And that's a ruling number 3. And I went, oh, yeah, I do that, don't I? But that's also why I have, a group of people and I know their energetic code that I can lean on for aspects that don't exist within me. For example, if he's a 4, I do have systems and structures in my code, but it's not kind of top of the chart. But it is for him. He's a ruling number 4. So when I want something really meticulously organized and a system put in place, he's much better at that than I am. And I love it. It might not be something that he loves to do in our home, for example, because he does it so well in his business. But when push comes to shove, he's my guy. He's the person to get that done. And so we get to also look at other people and see them for who they truly are and support them and lift them up in their own gifts and their own strengths and really see them. And when they're struggling, also know what it is that they need in their relationship. If my partner comes home and he's stressed out, there's a problem that he hasn't solved in his work. And that gives me the opportunity to support him and say, have you been outside? Have you moved your body? If it's been an office day, those are the 2 things that I recommend first and foremost. Once he gets connected outside, once he gets grounded, once he moves his body, then solutions start to show up. And he immediately sees this as an opportunity rather than a challenge. And he solved that problem very quickly. And then we can carry on with our evening with dinner and connecting to each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing is understanding your code helps you access the parts of you that are maybe tougher to see. And doing so, that makes you even more capable and prepared and present to support other people in your life around you and pour into them. And understanding their code, if you want to share that kind of information with each other, depending on what relationship we're talking about, is then something that helps you, again, understand more about what their experience might be like and ways that you can best meet them in that experience that's going to help both of you.
Relationships are everything. And oftentimes the conflicts that we experience are merely miscommunications because we're so scared to articulate who it is that we are and what we need, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know you and I have had a miscommunication in the last couple of months that just took sitting down and consciously engaging with each other and just having an open and honest, heartfelt, but kind exchange of our viewpoints. And we're fine. You get to the other side of it. It's just that it is, I think it evokes so many big, strong emotions in us, particularly, I would say, from the neurodivergent perspective. That is something, conflict in particular, it really, really presses all the buttons at once, I find, for myself. So it can be really tough to come to something like that with a nervous system that's going to even let you hear the other person and what they're saying. So it's a really handy thing to maybe have something that supports you to be able to do that, feeling a little bit more secure in your understanding of where the other person might be coming from and ways that you can engage with them so that you can feel heard and they can feel heard and you can find a middle ground.
Even, in numerology, knowing somebody else's code, it allows you to not take things personally. I know that from the neurodivergent community that oftentimes there's the sensitivity piece and the emotional piece because they're so highly intuitive and empathic that we can show up taking things very personally when it actually has nothing to do with us at all. So when I know somebody else's energetic code, it's easy for me to say, they didn't finish that project because of something that I did or because of a problem they had with me. They have 4 ones in their chart and 1 9. They are literally only going to create or finish 25% of the things that they start. That's who they are. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And what's going to set this person up for success is allow them to let go of things that don't make sense for them anymore. Like if it's not sparking joy, if it's not allowing them to step into their zone of genius, don't force them to keep doing something that they don't want to do. Number 1. Number 2, who else can I call in to this team in order to take projects across the finish line? If it's not going to be that person, why am I continuously pushing and forcing this person to be something that they're not? Why not bring somebody in that's their zone of genius? Same thing happens with my bookkeeper and my accountants and I all the time. It's quite funny, even though I'm a numerologist, I don't like talking that type of numbers. I'm getting much better and I have a great relationship with it now in terms of like my finances and my business and my abundance and setting those systems up. But we speak a different language because I'm a psychic spiritual teacher. I'm a soulful business strategist. Like I look at things from a higher perspective. They are attention to detail. We have different languages. And so it happens all the time where I'm saying one thing, they're saying another thing. Then I come back and say, yeah, but this is what I meant. And then they say something else. And I'm like, we're completely not on the same page, but we are. We are. We're just talking about it from a different perspective. And then I'm able to go, right, this is their zone of genius. So let them do and be what it is that I hired them to do. I tell them this is what we have to do moving forward. This is the system that we have to set up, and then allow them to go be that. So adding in those layers of numerology, again, it allows me to articulate who I am and what I'm really good at, and also what I don't want to do and what I'm not really great at, and say to them, this is what I need from you. And either you're the right person for that or you're not. But before even getting to that point, if I know their birth date, I know what it is that they're really good at. I know what their strengths are. I know what their gifts are. And from a business perspective, it saves me a lot of time and saves me a lot of money and headache with hiring people. It helps me call in my soulmate clients. And in my personal world, again, it helps reduce conflict because I don't take things so personally, which I'm somebody that I have a tendency to do that. I've done that a lot. And then I bring it into my mind and I develop a story and I'll run with that story. And then all of a sudden I get to this place of there was a meme about this, about jumping to conclusions. And it's like me. And it's like this person like putting a cape on, ready to jump to the next conclusion. And that's an aspect of ourselves, in the neurodivergent community that we judge and criticize ourselves for a lot. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves for, right? I see this time and time again, and it helps with that elimination of jumping to conclusions, because again, you can see that person for who they truly are and see when something has something to do with you and when something has nothing to do with you, right?
Absolutely. Just make it easier to assume good intent on the other side of the interaction instead of immediately jumping to those conclusions in our capes, because I am exactly the same.
Right. Or pack your suitcase. We're going on a guilt trip.
I've got a cape in a suitcase just over here. Yeah. I think it's so easy to fall into those patterns because we've played them out so many times in our lives, particularly I think as neurodivergent women who haven't necessarily realized that that's what our brains are like until later on in life. I think it creates so many strategies and approaches to the world that helped you get by and helped you survive, but not necessarily thrive in any of those environments. And the majority of the time it ends up landing back on you and having it be a burden that you carry, usually internally, and struggle with without even realizing that's what's been created, I think. Yeah. So I'd love to, speaking of all of those things, have a discussion around, I think ADHD is probably particularly relevant for us to speak about in this context, as far as what you've noticed in your group of clients, because I understand that you tend to call in a lot of neurodivergent people, particularly those that identify as ADHDers.
Yeah.
And so in your work and your experience of those clients and their numerology, do you see patterns that come up frequently in that group of people? And if so, what can they help us understand and better connect to with that experience?
Good question. Well, first of all, they make excellent entrepreneurs, period. Hands down. They are the ideators, the people that aren't afraid to take risks, and yet sometimes can be debilitated by it as well. I think that's a fair statement, right? There's always this kind of lust for growth and what's next and change and transformation. In terms of the numbers and seeing a pattern through numerology, I can speak to it, but it's going to be through the lens of my own energetic code, because that's what I attract. So I want to be very clear that just because somebody might have an aspect of their code that I'm speaking about, that means that they're neurodivergent, or that means that they're ADHD. It's literally from the lens of who I attract, because I have a particular energy that I carry. And so I will call that in order to be the medicine, the support, the help that person needs. Does that make sense? Makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is your experience of this kind of family of people and the numbers that you see because of who you are and who that translates to who you work with. So a different numerologist with a different code and a different approach working with ADHDers may see a different pattern. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's really important, because again, I don't want people to walk away with definitive answers or that box that we talked about at the beginning. We're not putting anybody or anything into a box. So what's common for me is multiple ones in their chart. Every time somebody comes into my world and I ask them, what's the challenge? What is it that you're seeking support? There's always this connection with multiple one energy. So they'll share it with me, and I'll say, by any chance, do you have multiple ones in your birthday? Are you born in October, November, December, January, or perhaps born on the 1st, on the 10th, 11th, 12th, right? And they're like, yes, I do. How did you know that? Or maybe through the addition of numbers, like it might land on master 11, for example. So when you add up your birthday, if that equals 29, 2 plus 9 equals 11, and that would be that double 11 energy. So multiple ones in their code. And again, the ones are the leaders, the ideators, which sometimes shows up as the problem of too many ideas. And that's why people come to me, because my 3 energy supports them to anchor into an idea and then expand it and connect that creative idea to abundant. And I love people with multiple ones. They're the talkers. They love talking. They love communicating. Like when we're hashing out like a business strategy, I always ask them, have you considered having a podcast? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yes, but I just don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm not too sure if I know how to do it. Like, it's kind of scary. And so supporting them to like bring their gifts out into the world. I also see a lot, something called the arrow of frustration. So again, numerology is simple, but it's very complex. So when we start to peel back the layers of somebody's energetic code, as you know, Sarah, we go and look at the arrows of influence in their energetic grid. The energetic grid is pure gold, in my opinion, in somebody's numerology blueprint. So one of the common arrows of influence is the arrow of frustration. That's what it's called. And literally what it means is, if you keep doing something that you don't want to do, it causes a lot of frustration. And a lot of my clients have this. I have this. My partner has this. A lot of my friends have it. And it's also this energy that the benefits of it are when you learn the lessons from the arrow of frustration, you learn how to get really good at setting boundaries. You learn the art of saying no, because it's not in alignment. It's not what I want to do. It's not my zone of genius. It's not my skill set. I just don't like it. I don't like it, so I don't want to do it. We get to do that. We get to do that in our life. We get to do that in our business. And I love that about the arrow of frustration. I know that I call people in who have a hard time with setting boundaries, who don't understand the art of saying no and the importance of it, and the importance of delegation, getting those things off of their plate so they can come back to the things that they love. If I was to pick top 3, so multiple ones, arrow of frustration, arrow of determination is the other one that I see. And this speaks to the recovering A types in the crowd, like me.
Andy.
Like Dr. Sarah Sibson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's beautiful energy here. I want to work with people, and I want people on my team that have the arrow of determination, because they always do what they say they're going to do. The not so great aspect of this arrow is that they will do it at all costs. They will sacrifice their family. They will sacrifice relationships. They'll sacrifice their health. They'll sacrifice their time because they said that they were going to do it. It is an arrow that carries the energy of success and ambition, and it can be blinding. And so when people come into my world, it is about supporting them to understand the benefits of having the arrow of determination, but to connect it back to their heart compass and to connect it back to their values, so that everything that they're doing is in alignment with the intelligence of their heart, with how it is that they want to feel, and the integrity, again, of their values. Because what's the point? If you succeed at something, you complete something, you finish it, it's not a victory. It's not a victory if it's not how you want it to feel. Like if the journey isn't fun, if it isn't adventurous, if it doesn't fill your cup, right? What's the point? And so I do see that a lot, the overachievers. You'll be able to speak to that better than I can about that connection of neurodivergence and being an overachiever. Yeah, so I'd say those are the top 3.
Interesting. There's so much there that we could probably talk about this for another few hours.
I know, right?
Yeah. But what came to mind, particularly as you were speaking, was I think you and I probably move in kind of similar circles as far as who we attract and who really matches up well with us. And my addition to that would be that I think that experience is extremely amplified if you're also quite intelligent as well.
Yeah.
And not necessarily classic book smarts, because I definitely realize that a lot of neurodivergent people have not been able to realize their various types of intelligence, because we tend to only value certain ones and only teach and focus on certain ones. But the gifted aspect of that experience is even another level up as far as intensity, I think, of all of what you've described. It is when you really are so overwhelmed by committing to all the things that you said you would because you struggled to say no, and then are so determined to complete all the things you agreed to because you don't want to let people down. And then also finding that if you pause for a minute and really, really think about it, the motivation for a lot of those choices is probably because that is how you feel worthy and approved of because of your life experience as a neurodivergent person up to that point, seeking that external validation. And so I think that's a great reflection of what turns up in the numerology that's then played out in life, and ways that we can have it reflect back to us of, okay, if you get immensely frustrated by doing something that you don't enjoy or that isn't your zone of genius, then why are you still doing it? What's something like that you can say no to? And then practicing saying no. I think that's the other hard part, is it's a visceral feeling of, if I say no, or if I don't be everything to everyone, like we talked about, then I'm not going to be connected. I'm not going to be allowed in. I'm not going to have those supports that I feel I need. Think I'm getting from those connections. But then my question to people that are in a situation and feeling that way is, if it's so conditional, is it really worth pouring absolutely all of you into it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you have something that's probably waiting just here for you to put that boundary in place and then actually truly love and support you in return, instead of you pouring everything into it and being left with nothing.
You make a lot of really great points. And numerology, I think, is something that a lot of people who are neurodivergent or ADHD would love, because it is an intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It's an energetic intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so natural to us that it's not anything that's ever been really focused on. It's, as a matter of fact, it's probably been shunted away from our field of view. And it's something that I personally have found to be inherent. Like, it came to me very easily, even though I'm same as you, classic numbers, spreadsheets, doing my books, hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
So it's this divergence.
Give me your birthday though. And I'm like, tell me more, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about it. So it's just the opportunity to find a new way to interact with numbers that on the surface probably scares you off because of your past experience with how our world works around numbers. But if you really lean into it, it probably is something that, well, or could be, I don't know. I don't want to assume for everybody, but I found that the more you lean into something that interests you, or at least makes you want to know more about it, then just try it out.
Yeah.
See if it lands. Yeah. It's a different type of intelligence that it helps you access. And it's one of a number of tools that you can use, whatever seems right for you. But what, if you don't mind me asking, really helped you understand more about yourself and make those connections between your life experience, your wisdom of numbers, and the way that your brain is wired and works? Like, what really was a missing understanding for you that trio really helped you connect with?
Great question. I think it's important for first everybody to know that I'm not officially diagnosed. I haven't gone through the process as many people have, and I've, in this point in time, have chosen not to. So I do want to respect people who have gone through that grueling, lengthy, challenging process from what I've heard. And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen not to. Why I do believe that I am neurospicy and connected to that community is because of a conversation that I had with Sarah around how I attract a lot of people that have ADHD, how it was my area of expertise for 10 years, how I love them. I love their superpowers. What other people might judge or criticize or kind of shy away from, that's something that I lean into and I really like. And obviously Instagram Reels has helped me diagnose myself as well.
Oh yeah, totally. Very accurate.
Yeah, it's totally why I know that I am. So I just wanted to make that caveat. But when I looked at my energetic code, particularly, I began to understand that I was wired for anxiety. So it helped me accept that about myself and love it. And accept that I'm an overthinker and an overanalyzer, and then also create skills, practices, habits in order to disrupt that lower frequency that I carry, reset, and bounce back so that way I can start moving and raising my own vibration and my own frequency so that way I can attract different outcomes that I desired. The other thing that really helped is knowing that I have the arrow of the planner. It was very much and still is connected to my anxiety. If I don't have a plan or know the plan, I'm anxious. If somebody else has made the plan and I'm not included in it, I'm anxious. I have anxiety. I don't like it. If the plan was made and it didn't happen, I would say 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, but I would say about 10 years ago is when I started to, work with that and become aware of it and realize that I would sabotage I would sabotage situations because we had a plan and then the plan didn't happen. I remember I've been criticized in jobs for being too organized. And I was like, how is this a bad thing? I remember it very well. She was like, you can't have a backup plan for a backup plan. I'm like, yes, I can. And I do. And so one person's criticism, though, I held on to that belief for a long time that I'm too organized, that there's something wrong with me, that everybody else doesn't have a backup plan for a backup plan. And I need to be more adaptable and I need to be more flexible. And yes, those things are true. I could adopt more flexibility in my life for sure. Learn how to be laissez-faire and, loosey-goosey and easygoing for sure. And I have worked on that. However, there's a time and a place where this is my brilliance. Don't take that away from me. Strategy is one of my top strengths. And that's because of that arrow of the planner. And there's also within my code, there's reasons why I lean towards business and why I'm very good at business. And that's why I've coupled those two together. And maybe it's because I brought up anxiety and I just see that it's a big problem. It's an epidemic right now of so many people giving themselves labels, putting themselves in boxes and just accepting it as is rather than doing something about it. But again, for me, it's looking at my code and seeing where does that come from and how can I love it? But more importantly, how can I lean into it and see what superpowers I carry to help elevate that feeling?
And it's the yes and that I really love focusing on of, sure, there are times where having 3 backup plans is probably not needed and is a drain on your energy and your focus to create those and spend time doing that. But other times it's a real forte of having that skill set. Like you said, it is not exclusive. It's not planning is bad or planning is good. It is, in some instances, we can choose to lean into that superpower and it's really appreciated and a strength that everyone seeks you out for. And other times we get in our own way and maybe get stuck in the loop of planning as a way to not do the thing that we're worried about doing.
Yes, absolutely.
And we just keep making more plans about how we might do it. Yeah. So it's both.
In my defense, I do want to share, because I think that your community will benefit from this. I was getting slammed for my backup plans. And this is when I ran camps for 100 kids. So I had 100 kids. I had like anywhere from 10 to 15 counselors. And I was taking 100 children off site. Kids throw you curveballs. And do you know how many ADHD kids I had in that group that were medicated or that parents would forget to medicate them that day? And the variables that were completely outside of my control. So in order to ensure the safety of the entire group, there would be a backup plan for a backup plan. There'd be safety kits. There'd be like, okay, we're going out fishing to the river today. There's hooks. There's rain, right? There's all of these things that could happen. And it's like, well, if it's raining or somebody gets injured, I've got everything in place in order to deal with it and make sure that, again, everybody's safe and that everybody's having fun. And then this is what we're going to do before we step into that disaster. I had somebody from that camp say that to me. They said, you'd be a very good paramedic because like when shit's hitting the fan, you're the person that we want. You're the person that we want. And I'm like, I know, I probably already have a plan for it because I've overthought it before. I've thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And I played all the scenarios out in my head like, well, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. And again, is it a curse? Sometimes, for sure. Absolutely. Is there other things I would be thinking about? Is there other things I would rather be doing? Absolutely. But then there's times where it's my ultimate superpower that it's, exactly what's needed for that scenario.
Yeah. And I think what you've just described of being the person that someone wants to go to in an emergency is another classic descriptor of an ADHDer, because for whatever reason, the way our systems are wired, our brains, I find personally, in my experience of literally life and death situations, it just switches over into this mode where everything that is unimportant disappears and you can focus in on what is important in front of you. And it's just this beeline to all of the wisdom that you carry and all of your life experience, which you probably had quite a lot and it might be pretty varied. And you can pour it into that scenario with excellent decision making in the moment, because our systems seem to be really excellent at doing that. So when the apocalypse arrives, I know who I want in my camp. A bunch of ADHDers, that's who.
I know. It's like hyper-focus activated.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And so it's, loving these parts of ourselves that we can recognize are not always amazing things. And I, as you were talking, was thinking it also has to do with, is it just about you or is it about other people? And are those other people young children that you carry a responsibility for? And, you take that really seriously and want to do right by them, versus, is this about what you have for breakfast? Well, maybe you don't need to have three options in your pantry every time, because it'll be fine if you have to have the one thing that's there. But it's all about when you apply that superpower and when it's not so necessary.
Yeah. I'm obviously giggling because I need to have more than one option.
Oh, is that why that came to mind?
You can't eat eggs every single day. Come on.
Love it.
Too funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think as much as I could talk to you for ages, we will start wrapping up now. And I would love to ask you, kind of as a lead into some questions that I ask everybody. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
It's too big for an overthinker. Well, there's something that somebody said at an event that I was at. I was going through a very difficult time in my life. I'm somebody who in the past, along with anxiety, suffered from depression for long bouts. And I was in one of those pockets of time that I refer to as the Great Depression. And at this event, somebody said, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And my response was, being right makes me happy. And then I went, stop. I think I've really missed the point in this. And I can see it now in my energetic code as well. Because our energetic code is, and also it's why I love numerology, the energy is mapped out for us from the moment we're born to the moment that we decide to cross over. And so I can see all of those experiences in my life, how they led up to this moment and this person that feels the need to constantly defend and debate and prove that they are right, and why there was a connection to worth and happiness and how that needed to be dismantled. And a lot of it had to do with, again, being the 7 of clubs. I'm somebody who's experienced a lot of loss in my life. My spiritual support team has over 20 people, and those are people that have been near and dear to me on earth and have crossed over. And those experiences kicked up the spiritual side of me and the psychic gifts. And again, that's what I was hiding and playing small and not allowing other people to see those aspects of me. So when it came to like the surface level, mundane, everyday stuff, I think I was fighting a lot about things that don't really matter and trying to prove that I was right, and not seeing that it was actually blocking my own happiness. And it had a lot to do with the anger that I was harboring for the loss, which was grief. And also the anger that I was holding on to because I felt I couldn't fully step into my potential and be me. Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
So simple and so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful.
I'd rather be happy.
Hands down.
I'd rather be happy. Yeah.
And I think you described exactly how we can get there. Be ourselves.
Understand who it is that you are. And once you understand that and know that and unlock your energetic code, be unapologetic about it. And if you happen to be neurodivergent and you have that label, own it. They are superpowers. They are not something that makes us less than. They are not something that makes you less worthy. In fact, I think it helps you hold an extra level of uniqueness that the world actually really needs right now. There's a lot of new energy that's coming to Earth. And I do believe that neurodivergent people or crystal children or indigo children, they're the ones that chose to come to Earth at this time in order to help anchor in these new energies, to help everybody else calibrate to the new vibration that's happening, right? Again, we can talk forever.
I know, it's dangerous.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, I would love to ask you a few rapid fire kind of wrap up type things. You can just answer and have it be your truth. So that will lead us straight into, what are your 3 personal truths that have transformed your human experience?
Authenticity is magnetic. I'd rather be happy than right. Oh, a 3rd one. I'm kind of a big deal. And so are you.
Truth. If you were to travel back in time to the pivotal event in your life that led you down your current path, what wisdom would you share with past you in that moment as she was experiencing it?
You are the spiritual teacher that everybody needs in that moment. Lean in, be who you came here to be.
Beautiful. And how do you think we can create more harmony and connection in our lives?
Understand your own personal energetic code.
Love it. And I would love for you to share where people can connect with you and find out more about what you're up to and what your next adventures are in the world that are unfolding right at the minute.
Oh, well, my website is AnnMarieMcKenzie.com because I'm a smarty pants. I bought all of the domains on how to misspell my name. I like to play on Instagram. AnnMarieMcKenzie13 is where you can find me on all social media platforms. The most recent thing that I put out that I feel would benefit everybody, and particularly your audience, is the 2025 energy forecast. You can find that on my website, or you can go to my YouTube channel and understand the universal energy that we are all experiencing as a collective this year, which is the 9 energy. We're at the end of the manifestation cycle. And there's a lot of golden nuggets that I dropped in order to support you in your life and or business. And there's predictions in there as well. And of course, soulful strategies to make sure that you know what to do with all of the information. So it's not just bombarding you with a lot of info and leaving you with not really understanding what to do with it. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to align with it and how they can capitalize on what's coming through for all of us.
Well, I have watched it and I consider it to be a great resource. So
Thank you.
I can double down on that advice to go find that. And I just want to say thank you again. You've invested double the amount of time and energy and effort in us getting to the place where we have a recording that we're able to share with people. So I particularly appreciate you doing this twice with me. And I always love our time together. So I appreciate you joining out today for this conscious conversation that we've had.
Thank you. And thank you to all of your listeners in your community for tuning in and for connecting with us through this conscious conversation. Yeah. Love you.
Love you too. And we will certainly have more to talk about, I'm sure. So we will see you back on here again sometime in the future, I hope.
Thanks.
Thank you for expanding with us on Divergent Wisdom Broadcast. We deeply appreciate the contribution of your time and attention to our shared adventure. If today's discussion resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, revelations, and experiences in the comments. Please take a moment to subscribe and share us with your cosmic crew. And remember, we're all made of the same stardust.